Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Salt City Hoops podcast. The Jazz have 0 preseason games remaining, but Mark and I still have 5 guys to pour over in our look at the regular roster. We haven't really talked two-way guys. We won't tonight, but we still have 5 guys, and we've been kind of spacing them out so we get a couple of those high-minute, interesting young guys, potential future stars, kind of intermixed with some veterans that we won't have as much to say about. We have 5 of those guys left. The way we've been kind of doing it is talking about each guy's best outcome for the season, worst outcome for the season, where we kind of think they'll land, including every now and then we sneak in a boldish prediction, and then some combinations and or lineups and or whatever that we want to see those players operate in. So we're going to do that for 5 more games in this final podcast as we get you ready for the regular season, which starts coming up. The 5 guys we're going to talk about in this last edition, again, are pretty interesting dudes. Keyonte George, Taylor Hendricks, Kyle Filipowski, Jusuf Nurkic, Svi Mykhailiuk. That's how we'll wrap up this little series. My partner in crime for that, by the way, I'm Dan Clayton over here. My partner in crime for this exercise has been Mark Pereira, who's back with us tonight, even though he's got a little tickle in his throat. So we're going to try to go easy on him tonight. Mark, how's it going over there in the Mile High?
I'm doing great. The main problem with having a sickness when I'm doing these podcasts is I like to add a little social lubricant to my thoughts and have a beer or two as I'm doing these. And as I hit my my mid-30s, I've learned that treating your liver correctly should be the ideal way to approach life. So we got some hot tea on this Saturday evening when we're recording. Just finished up BYU Utah, and depending on, I know pretty much most of our fans are, fans of one of those two teams. So it was a great outcome or a poor outcome, depending. I don't care. My University at Buffalo Bulls won today. I am happy with how their mid-American conference season is going. And of course, no disrespect to the Utah States and Westminster Colleges and Weber States and everywhere else that you may be hailing from and listening. But we're doing well. This is a very interesting show with the players that you just mentioned, as far as these are probably not any of these players going to be all-stars, right? I mean, we'd love for them to be all-stars someday, of course, but these are the players that will add a ton of juice or equity to the next Jazz playoff team if they hit, right? The first 3 in particular, those young guys you mentioned. And Nurkic also can, if he has some sort of productive season, is there some sort of asset you can get in return for Nurkic? We'll mention if that's a possibility or not. These are 4 of these 5 guys are worthwhile talking about. For, yes, we want them to have great seasons, but also, like, this can't just be Ace Bailey, Markkanen, and Walker Kessler. You need a whole rotation, and we're all really hoping that at least 1, 2, hopefully all 3 of these guys can hit. So I'm excited to talk today.
Yeah, all 3 of those are guys who, in kind of not their best case scenario, but in their like 60%, 70% best case scenario, could be really important utility players for the next version of the Jazz, the next good version of the Jazz. So that's interesting. I like that you threw in Westminster College there, the storied football program of Westminster College. During your preamble about Utah sports,
we have one notable alum, and I think in fact he is called a notable alum of recent vintage by Westminster. So that's why I thought I really don't know my Utah universities very well. I don't live there, so I'm just kind of guessing at this point.
We'll forgive you. We'll forgive you. All right. Well, let's do it. Let's get into Keyonte George. Keyonte George, for now, appears to be holding down the starting spot for the Utah Jazz. Now, obviously, we still haven't seen Isaiah Collier healthy at all in the preseason. So Keyonte George had lost the starting spot to Isaiah midway through last season. The fact that he has started every game in the preseason could just be a function of Isaiah Collier being out, although some people had noted that Keyonte George was primarily practicing and scrimmaging with the starters even before Isaiah tweaked a hammy. So, I would assume that they're giving him another shot at that starting spot. I'm fine with that, by the way. I think that's great. He was a 16th pick in the draft. He, by all accounts, had a great summer. So I'm totally great with giving him another shot to see if he can get in there and run the team like a real sort of, you know, point guard, which is not really what he ever was or has been. But that's certainly why they drafted him, is with the idea that they could convert him into that. So now that I'm wrapping up my lengthy preamble about Keyonte, Mark, like, what do you think? What if you let your imagination run wild about the type of season Keyonte could have? What's your best case version for his season?
So two things are true when I think of Keyonte George and where we can go from here. Let's start out by noting that I'm a pessimist. I always have been since the moment he was drafted about Keyonte George. And in end of season media availability, I closed the book. I locked whatever protector was on the book. I didn't throw away the key, but I did lock it when he was asked about where do you think you'll try to improve this summer, and he said something about mid-range pull-ups or something like that, where it was a completely unserious answer for, hey, what can you provide a team, or what are your holes or anything like that. I said, this is an unserious basketball player. He has been for 2 years. And it's not just between the ears. It's all about, I don't think the mental side of playing basketball is just like, oh, you're thinking or you're not thinking. I think that there actually is a physical component to feeling the other 9 players on the court, and it just really wasn't where we were going there. However, now I'm going to get to the second part of like where this is going to go extremely right. First of all, Bryce Sensabaugh played in Summer League. Keyonte George did not. Right? I think if there was any question about Keyonte George's NBA future, like if the team believed in his NBA readiness, they would have said to Keyonte, just like they said to Sensabaugh, get out there and crush him in Utah Summer League. Remember, we made Walker Kessler play in Summer League, right? So I think there is a little bit of confidence in that. Okay, he is a ball handling guard that is in the firmly in the rotation. Utah's coaching staff believes that they can shore up some of the rougher edges. Okay, that was already a vote of confidence where I said, that was kind of interesting that they didn't give him the Walker Kessler, Bryce Sensabaugh, please go show out in Salt Lake City Summer League. Thought that was a little interesting. Then the whole leadership component of this, where he comes back and all the media day availability is saying like Keyonte is a different person as a leader. And okay, you lose a Jordan Clarkson, you lose a Colin Sexton, you lose a John Collins, and I feel like on every single one of these previews I've been invoking David Locke, if only because I think he's done a fabulous job reading the tenor of the roster and the personalities. I think he's always been kind of good at that, and whether or not you care for anything else about David Locke's work, I think he's just always had a good beat on the personalities of the Jazz over the years, and I think he's absolutely right that with a leadership vacuum, then Keyonte has actually kind of sucked up a lot of it naturally, and that is very, very good sign. Now, the learning to play capital P, capital G point guard in the NBA is a long process, and I actually don't think we should ever expect him to turn into Ricky Rubio or even just like Chris Duhon, like passing point guard. There's a remember some guys for you. Chris Duhon mentioned in the Utah Jazz podcast. But if there's some sort of like poor man's version of Devin Booker where you can be the lead guard and initiate offense and make some basic reads, or just have some clever reads, understand how to use a screen, understand how to reject a screen, understand how to work with your big man throughout the course of a season on what you should be doing on pick and roll situations. Those are also things that you don't have to be a huge, like an 8, 9, 10 assist point guard to pick up those things over time. A great season for him is where we're sitting here being like, why, where we just feel stupid that this was even a competition. That this is obviously he is the most NBA ready lead guard. I think Collier and Clayton have more, the natural point guardy things that you typically look for. But hey, if he's got the off the dribble 3 working, and he knows he's a little bit bigger of a guy, he does things a little bit differently from a size perspective than Clayton could, because Clayton's also got that 3-point ability. That's what I'm hoping for a great season. The offense in preseason didn't seem like that right away, where he's like just blowing away the competition, but his demeanor is different, and this is the most optimistic I've been about Keyonte George, including the moment we drafted him.
So you're looking for the key with which you locked said book previously.
Oh no, I know where it is. It's on my my ring of janitor keys where
okay.
I just have to
All
figure it out. It's just there are some prospects that I have thrown away the key on where I just don't want to be convinced. I don't want to be sucked back in. He's a player where
Sure.
I said I closed the book, but you've shown some things this summer, and the coaching staff has given him confidence. Or have shown the fans that he is deserving of our confidence until December.
Yeah. So quick point of clarification. I don't know if this could just to clarify for the listener. Walker Kessler did in fact not. I looked this up while you were talking in case I was crazy. He did not play this last summer league. He did play his third summer league, which was kind of his equivalent.
Right.
So
it's more of a he played in summer league when we all looked around wondering why.
Right. So Keyonte George. Yeah, I'm kind of with you. The phrase I've heard Hart use a few times about Keyonte is just that he's someone whose talent kind of jumps out at you when you watch film, and I think obviously that has enticed the Jazz, even though positionally, what he is. Like there's a world where he's, Lou Williams or Jamal Crawford or Jordan Clarkson, frankly, is another one of these types of guys who's just, a 6'4" and under, kind of shooting guard in a point guard's body, score first, but not particularly high efficiency. So he's a guy you're going to bring off the bench forever and just let him, average 14 a game, 17 a game, 12 a game, 18 a game, whatever. And that's fine. That's a good player. There's value in that. And I think that's why a lot of people just assume at this point that Keyonte is going to have a 10-year NBA career. What the Jazz hoped when they drafted him is that they could actually kind of repurpose him, refashion him into someone like Devin Booker, who also was never a point guard until he got to the NBA and just kind of had that foisted upon him. And it went well enough that now, even though Booker isn't always the nominal point guard, he can be the team's lead ball handler and he can kind of run the show. And they tried that with Keyonte, and it always felt to me a little square peg round hole, to the point that they finally said midway through last season, no, we're gonna let this other guy, who by the way can't shoot the basketball, but he has a knack for just kind of reading defenses and getting other people involved, and we'd rather have that than a knockdown shooter. And to me, that felt at the moment like kind of a concession, like okay, hey, Keyonte George isn't going to be on a Devin Booker trajectory, and that's okay. And if that's the case, I think I'm less excited about his future, just because 6'4" and under mid efficiency ISO guard is maybe my least favorite archetype in the NBA. That's why I wasn't excited about the Jordan Clarkson trade in December of 2019. He proved me wrong. He made being a Jazz fan more fun for the last 6 years, but I initially wasn't excited because I was just like, yeah, I've seen that guy. I've seen that guy 20 times, and I'm cool. So anyway, I'm rambling. I think for me, the type of season that he would have to kind of change Dan Clayton's opinion about his long-term future is a season where he's shooting 36% on off the bounce threes. I kind of don't care what he shoots on catch and shoot, because if you're going to be a lead ball handling guard in the NBA, you have to be able to shoot behind screens. Keyonte George hasn't really. He was a 32% shooter off the dribble last year from three. But more importantly than that, I just want to see that he can run the offense with pace. And when I say with pace, we talked about this a little bit in the last episode. Nothing bothers me more than the possessions where Keyonte brings it up, kind of lollygags, stands way out near the logo on one side or the other, and then finally calls for the first screen with 11 seconds on the shot clock, and the first pass on that possession doesn't happen until 8 seconds on the shot clock. That is not fun basketball to watch. If Keyonte George is going to be in charge of running the Utah Jazz offense, I want it to look closer to what it looks like when Isaiah Collier runs it, or for that matter, Svi Mykhailiuk runs it. Like, just go get into the action sooner. Run the first screen with 16 left on the shot clock. Like, look like you're trying to, get other people involved in the action, and then from there, if the way it plays out is that the possession still ends with you, I'm cool with that. But just the pace. And I don't even mean pace in like a clock sense. The pace of decision making is what I think Keyonte really needs to improve at. And the thing that if he does that, I will look back at the end of the season and be like, okay, Keyonte George, like, I will now shut up about you, and I will now, give you space to grow, and maybe you can be on the path of a guy who could run an NBA offense.
Another good outcome for him, where we think really positively about him, are just juicing up his rebounding numbers, steal numbers, things that can affect the game in other ways. He can't be the worst defender in the NBA. Like, I think he's one of the 3 worst defenders in the NBA last year. I think unserious basketball is a big part of that. And I think the whole tenor of the team of we're going to try, and also because he hasn't established himself significantly over Collier or Walt Clayton, that he could get yoinked. I also think that in certain lineups you could go completely point guardless on certain things if his defense isn't there. Like, on certain crunch time lineups, I could actually see the last 2 minutes of a game not having any point guard out there. Walt Clayton for rookie reasons, Isaiah Collier for shooting reasons, and Keyonte George for defense reasons, and you just say, Bryce Sensabaugh, you are the ostensible one, and we will figure out how to run plays. Like, these are professional basketball players. It's over the course of a season and in 48 minutes of a basketball game. Like, yeah, you need some point guards. But I could totally see Keyonte George's defense just being a reason to nail him to the bench. An interesting comp that I think I'm going to be watching both of these guys is Kevin Porter Jr. So Kevin Porter, wildly talented, and for personal reasons was kind of ducked to the end of the first round when Cleveland picked him up, and then he was shipped off to Houston, where he also had moments of
more
brilliance
problems.
He had moments of brilliance, and then he became a moron again. Didn't play in the NBA for a season. The Clippers picked him up out of nowhere. He was horrific for the Clippers, and then and some random trade, he ends up in Milwaukee. I forget exactly how he ended up in Milwaukee. And then all of a sudden, he starts playing really well under Doc Rivers and with Giannis. And there's been a lot of positive press about Kevin Porter Jr., both mentally, both performance-wise. He stopped dribbling randomly on pick and rolls. He's just flying to the rim. He's doing these things that are what you're talking about. He is moving way faster. He and Keyonte have kind of like the same problems as far as dribbling the air out of the ball and just not moving fast enough. So Keontae's got all these athletic gifts, offensively at least, to not play as slowly. So these are okay. Is he a 15-5-5 guy? Yeah, like he's not there. That player is in him with decent efficiency, so that could absolutely be a good player. And is he a long term? Does he project as a starter? I don't even think that's his best case scenario, but he needs to walk out of the season with us thinking, yeah, like maybe we'll have some light extension talks. Maybe we won't. Maybe we'll go into restricted free agency, but at least going into next summer where 29 other teams are thinking, yeah, like that's someone who we would want on our team as well. Instead of just Utah has him because we drafted him and now we have to kind of deal with the consequences of having Keyonte George. So this is all kind of a split-handed compliment, however you want to phrase it. You can tell that our pessimism about Keyonte George is high, given that every compliment on how this could go well for him is always couched with other negatives. But this could go bad really quickly, couldn't it, Dan?
Well, it could, although, I guess that's my thing. Like there is a worst case for Keyonte in just basketball terms or statistical terms. I actually kind of think the worst case scenario for the Jazz where Keyonte is concerned is that he just stays exactly where he's been. Like, in a way, it's kind of easier and takes pressure off you if all of a sudden, the Monstars get him and he stinks. Like, But I think what people don't realize is how similar his first two seasons were to each other. He just really didn't move the needle at all. From an efficiency standpoint, he scored like less than a bucket more per 36 minutes. Everything was just very consistent, copy and paste from year one to year two. So if we're sitting here after year three and he's had another year where he's like 17, 18 points per 36, sub 54% true shooting, 39, 34, 83 shooting splits. Like, to me, that might actually be a worse outcome for the Jazz than if he just either goes backwards or forwards, because then, you mentioned it, like the Jazz are heading into extension negotiations with Keyonte George next year. Next July, they can offer him an extension. I'm not saying they will. I'm not saying they should. I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm just saying, like, that's how quickly this comes up now. And because it comes that quickly, I think it would be kind of damaging if the Jazz look up after 82 more games and still don't really know if Keyonte is anything. It's kind of why, Mark, and maybe this counts as a bold prediction or maybe not. I think of the young guys, like I'm not putting him on the sliding scale with Svi and Nurk and Kyle Anderson, but of the young guys, I think he might be the most likely to get traded of the young guys, just because I do think he has value to in the eye of certain beholders out there. And at some point, the Jazz might just be going like, man, what do we even offer this dude as a starting point in extension negotiations? Because, again, and by the way, like I meant to start with this, like that's why your KPJ comp is kind of interesting, because KPJ was a very similar player his first 2 or 3 seasons. Like, again, his counting stats went up modestly, but if you look at per 36 and efficiency and all these things, he was kind of the same player. And then just started to have more and more of that kind of personal nonsense leaking in and distracting the team, which is why Houston moved in. Or moved on rather. So it is kind of an interesting comp. And that's why, to me, the worst case for Keyonte is just that it's another season exactly like the two we've already seen. And that's not, again, to your point, that sounds like I'm saying he's been bad. He hasn't been bad. It's just with these guys that you draft with a mid-first round pick, you just want to see them start to build on something at some point.
I think he's been pretty bad. And I think the trade part is interesting because you can easily see another team thinking, well, I can fix him. And this is probably the last year that you can get away with that story before it's, oh no, we will need to give him some small contract and see if we can build him up from the bench or something like that. Whereas like this year, you get around December, January, February, you can still plausibly convince another team, perhaps another rebuilding-ish team who needs any sort of ball handling, or something, or they just believe in him. Like, hey, yeah, this is worth a couple seconds, or this is worth a challenge trade of Keyonte George for your similarly problematic player like a Jarris Walker. Or something like that, where it's like, we'll try to swap some positions and see where it goes. The other point to mention here is we're kind of talking about the lineups we want to see Keyonte George in. The Jazz have just a desultory set of ball handlers. I can be optimistic about Isaiah Collier and Walt Clayton as well, but there is just no ball handling up the roster. You got Kyle Anderson who can do a little bit. Jusuf Nurkic has really impressed me in the preseason. We know Jusuf Nurkic has a triple-double to his name. He's got some passing ability. We saw 8 assists out of Kessler the other day, but obviously he's not a ball handler. So there's only 3 guys. Because even Bryce Sensabaugh, like, if he's going to dribble, it's going to be for his own offense. He's not really a ball mover kind of guy. So Svi Mykhailiuk, we'll talk about him later. I'm not excited to talk about Svi Mykhailiuk. So the idea of Keyonte on this team is I need to see him with like 4 players that he has no excuse to be part of this 5-player egalitarian offense where every single player on the court is worth a damn in the NBA. And if that is Keyonte George, Bryce Sensabaugh, Lauri Markkanen, and either Jusuf Nurkic or Walker Kessler at the center. I don't really care who the center is. And then hopefully like Taylor Hendricks is also like a very positive player, right? So or it could be someone who's like, I don't know, like Kyle Anderson, like he's an NBA player. If Keyonte George is on the floor with four other very good NBA players, those are the examples, those are the repetitions that I want to see where he doesn't have an excuse to play Keyonte George solo basketball. It's got to be the working with the rest of the offense in an appropriate way. That's what I'm excited to see. He got away with a lot of bullshit the past 2 years, and he won't be able to do that this year, I don't think.
See, and I went kind of a different direction, although for a similar reason. Like I want to see him on the court with people who are capable but who aren't necessarily self-creators. Because to me, the last sort of unsolvable question with Keyonte is like, can he be the guy who sets the table for Lowry? Can he be the guy who sets the table for Taylor Hendricks? Can he run pick and roll with Walker Kessler? They've never had like amazing pick and roll chemistry despite a lot of reps. So actually my guy I went with is Taylor Hendricks. I think Keyonte George, Taylor Hendricks minutes, and then, fill out the other three as you desire. I think that'll be interesting, number one, because Hendricks will help kind of compensate for some of Keontae's defensive shortcomings, but also because, Taylor Hendricks is not a guy who like dribbles and creates. So I just think playing with two or three of those guys, like if Keontae's playing with Taylor Hendricks and Walker Kessler and then a couple of other wings, then he's going to we're going to have to see him in that environment be more of a distributor, or else we're not. And if we're not, then that's good information to have heading into his extension summer.
I've talked at length with my frustrations of Lauri Markkanen putting the ball on the floor in certain situations. I think you're absolutely right that if he's playing with insert shooting guard here, who doesn't matter, but if it's a Hendricks, Markkanen, Kessler combo, which looks to be the starting lineup, we're going to talk about Hendricks in a minute, which is very exciting. Haven't mentioned Ace Bailey at all, but because I feel like our two guard situation is also going to be someone who can have the ball. But if Keyonte George is like playing basketball with three people who depend on him to give them the basketball,
yes,
for efficient offense, he's got to be able to do it or not. Like and these are players that are going to be very easy to get the ball to. Like that's not difficult to work with a Markkanen or a Kessler. Make it happen, man. It's been 3 years now.
Especially with all the stuff the Jazz run off the ball for Markkanen and Kessler's a pretty good instinctual dive big. Hendricks is looking really solid as a corner shooter. So if the defense sucks in at all, like that's an A or B read. That's exactly what I want to see. And, I've heard a few times third hand, like this is not me report. I've not talked to anyone in the locker room about this, but just enough people have told me that they suspect that Lowry doesn't love playing with Keyonte, that that's why those minutes kind of matter. Can you make everybody think twice about you and go, hey, maybe he really can be the guy who gets everybody involved and, just kind of manages the game, manages the team, manages everybody's touches. Because if not, then, like I said, that's information.
I sit on the pessimistic side of the ledger still, but we'll see if I open that book back up. We've implicated Taylor Hendricks
on your Willie the janitor key ring.
Yeah, well,
Taylor Hendricks.
It's on the key ring somewhere. We've mentioned his name quite a bit. Now we got some preseason film on Taylor Hendricks. How do you feel?
Excited. I mean, I think he had a slip and fall. He's had a couple of hit a body and fall, and those have been the moments I've kind of been watching for most closely, just to see kind of how he bounces up after a guy contests him at the rim and they both go down in a heap. Not only does he look like those moments have not bothered him at all, but he looks every bit as mobile, every bit as agile. We're talking about a guy who's 6'10", 6'11", but moves like a wing. Good defensive instincts. There were a couple of times in the preseason finale where it looked like he was getting beat off the dribble, and then I went back and looked at him, and really that was when the Jazz were in zone, so he probably was technically supposed to let his guy, kind of go hand off his guy to another defender, and sometimes that other defender wasn't there, and that was the breakdown. So on second look, I got to give Taylor a pass on those. I think he's a guy who has a chance. First of all, let's just start here. Taylor Hendricks, the best outcome is that he plays 70 plus games, period. Like, that would be a win. And asking anything else is a little greedy. But if I'm going to be greedy, like, I think he's a guy. Remember, he shot 38% from three, almost 39% from three in his rookie season. So, if he could have the kind of season where he's back to being a 38, 39-point three-point shooter who's also getting all defense buzz. I don't think he will make all defense because the Jazz will be too bad, but I don't care. Just like hearing his name associated with all defense would be an exciting thing, and I think he has the capability to do that.
So over 4 preseason games, he only had I'm already forgetting whether it was, but it was either only 2 steals or 2 blocks. It was and 0 of the other category. I'm kind of looping them in together because I like to think of him as this defensive marvel. And as I prepare, and hopefully everyone else is preparing for their fantasy drafts and everything, I'm looking at him as like, all right, give me over 3 combined steals and blocks, buddy. Like, give me 8 rebounds and 1.6 steals and 1.9 blocks, and just be the next version of Kirilenko. And we didn't see that, but we saw the shooting. We saw the shooting for sure. I think that has absolutely not gone away. He was a great 3-point shooter in college. He wasn't like the JJ Redick style shooter, right? But every time he was given a shot, he shot at a great clip in college, and he did so in the NBA as well. So this super raw prospect who barely plays his rookie year, obviously doesn't play last year. I still have wild expectations for what he could be. And I was a little disappointed in just like the lack of counting stats, but it's 4 games. It's a super small sample size. Could he have a 5, 6, 7 block game? I think that's firmly within the range of possibilities. So just having somebody who is a chaos agent defensively that the Jazz have not had over the past couple years. I can't count his rookie season, obviously, because Kessler is going to be sound defensively and do all the right things defensively and have like a crazy 9-block game this season. I'm sure Kessler will. But Kessler isn't a chaos agent, and that's what I want out of Hendricks is just, if he's on the floor, the opponent, all 5 opponent players on the court are thinking about him on the floor and like, where's Hendricks? Is he on the opposite side? Is he on the strong side? Like, where is Hendricks as I'm trying to do what I'm doing? Or God forbid, I'm being guarded by Taylor Hendricks and I have the basketball. This is a problem for me. Where you mentioned playing 70 games. I know the Jazz take it very, very, very cautious with injuries and everything. What I'm going to be watching most often is minutes per game. I think it's going to be interesting to see how the Jazz decide to tax his body and what he's ready to do, especially because we really haven't seen a full season of this body type for Taylor Hendricks, right? I don't think the body type is the reason that he broke his leg, but he put on the significant weight last summer. And then he broke his leg. So I think we need to figure out, like, hey, can his body do that for 30 minutes? Or is he still like a 20-minute per game guy? Or you want to deploy him in choice 4-minute stints and here and there? And the last thing I'll say about what my preseason observations of him before I think about, like, all right, what is my best case scenario for him this year? I don't think it's only been 4 preseason games. So let me couch this accordingly. And I know he's coming back from a broken leg. He doesn't appear like FU explosive athletically, where he's playing above the rim, and maybe his reduced block numbers are indicative of that. He's had a few dunks in the preseason, but they've been mainly like, okay, I'm big and I have the ball under the basket and I got an easy dunk out of it.
Putbacks too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Foot
and
next too.
so I'm one of the high aspects of Hendricks' draft profile was his totally above the rim athleticism on the offensive and defensive sides of the court. And I really want to see that play out this year. So my ideal case of Hendricks is, oh, he is that explosive athlete with 35 more pounds or whatever it is. And he's got those 3.5 combined steals and blocks. He's shooting 40% from three on catch and shoots, right? Maybe 38, 39% overall. And he is you don't take him off the floor for closing lineups on games you're trying to win. Like, you have to play him, where he is just, no matter how many minutes per game you play him or how you rest him or whatever, if he's active, you save his minutes for the end of the fourth quarter because he's that damn good. And man, that would be very exciting for the Jazz future.
Well, and by the way, that leads into my bold prediction. I don't even know if it's that bold a prediction. Like, I think he will start 80% of the games he plays, and I think he'll close a lot of them for one specific reason, and that's that he might be the Jazz's most switchable defender. No, not might. Like, he is, without a doubt, the Jazz's most switchable defender. So when it's late in games and you're switching all pick and roll action, he's the one guy who, like, you kind of don't care if he winds up on Kevin Durant or Fred VanVleet. Okay, bad example because Fred VanVleet is injured all year. But, give me another. Like, you don't care if in a pick and roll situation he gets stuck on
Kevin Porter or Giannis.
Right. I mean, you don't want anyone guarding Giannis, but yeah. So anyway, for that reason alone, I do think he's going to play a ton. I think he's going to start most games. I think he's going to close a lot of games. But yeah, I mean, you're right that he is still sort of an idea in that he has played 43 games, and 40 of them were as this little naive, wiry, thin, pogo stick rookie. Then he went and worked on his body, and we only got to see that for 2.5 games. And so he is sort of still a concept. And I think it's fair to wonder if the way that's going to actually manifest itself on the court is going to be in line with all of our expectations. Because I do think expectations for him have gotten higher among Jazz fans in this preseason. I think you and I were excited going into the preseason, but I think the rest of Jazz Nation is now going like, oh man, he looks fine. He's starting. Like, let's go. Like, let's see, Taylor Hendricks be a top X defender. And that might not happen all at once.
So one of the other avenues for optimism that I have as a unruly Jazz fan is, I think it has become so much of a joke on players looking like incredible in training camp or whatever on comments that players and coaches have stopped really mentioning how good somebody looks in training camp or whatever because of undue expectations, or just, I think a lot of comments have become more muted over the past 5 years that we've now overcorrected, where a lot of players and coaches don't say anything about their teammates or the players they're coaching as far as like, hey, who looks good in camp? Like, they don't really answer those questions. One exception has been Taylor Hendricks, and part of it has been couched in, we're all just so thrilled to have him back there because we haven't seen him on the court in a year. We're all super emotionally happy to have him back. It is a fabulous story. And by the way, his attitude ever since his first media presence after his broken leg was just, I don't understand how a man can act like that. He's terrific. Has absolutely a terrific approach to this, as if he's actually acting upon the public persona he has. But also his teammates and coaches have said, in no uncertain terms, he's kind of a problem every single practice. So it leaves me very optimistic. Yeah. So I just, the floor for me for Hendricks is way higher. So when I think about worst case scenarios, it's like all minutes and learning curve based. I don't have any weird optimism for him having all-star potential quite yet, right? Like, you need to do a way more to have any sort of all-star credibility. But I don't see a world where he's not an NBA player. Like, he's done enough where the floor for me is just, oh, he's going to be on a roster for 10 to 12 years, just by being a big, fast shooting power forward sized player. And so just like a worst case scenario is just like, you can't trust his defense just because of his reputation. And if you're playing in certain lineups, actually, no, we're not going to play you. And even if he starts, he's Keith Bogansing it and only playing 12 minutes because, okay, he kind of fits with a lineup at the first and third quarter, but he's only playing 12 minutes a game. And you still see obvious learning curve things. But I don't, unless Filipowski, which we're going to talk about next, completely blows him out of the water, I just think Hendricks has an open path to minutes, however many he wants.
I agree, and the preseason bears that out. Only Keyonte George has played more in the preseason, so I think we're in the same boat on Hendricks overall. Lineup wise, and I've said this before, but I'm so intrigued by the idea of Ace, Hendricks, Lowry being the 2, 3, 4, however you view them. I'm less excited about them being the 3, 4, 5, just because I think that's less novel in today's NBA to start with 3 players like that and be playing small ball. I think playing them at the 2, 3, 4 is kind of playing huge ball, and yet you wind up with so much skill, so much shooting on the floor. Depending on who they're playing with, you still, for that to work, you still need you need a good point guard at that point to just kind of move the ball around, because again, none of those 3 except maybe Ace, and we don't know yet, can just go out and kind of manufacture their own bucket on a semi-reliable basis. I see you. Go ahead.
If preseason is any indication, the transition defense is still going to be a nightmare, like maybe worse in the NBA. Correct. I don't understand what the problem is. But if the Jazz have a path to being better than 30th defensively, it has to start with a Hendricks-Kessler combination to me. And so that is, I'm going to be paying attention to defensive rating when Kessler and Hendricks share the floor. Is no matter how bad the rest of the the defensive operation goes, are those two doing enough at the rim and on the perimeter against the forward size players to be 22nd defensively? That'll portend well for the future. Sorry, I only had itchy thoughts because I know we got 3 more guys to get to, and
yeah,
I was just trying to be quick.
So Kyle Filipowski, I'll follow your cue and move on to Flip. Flip is interesting because last year, and I'm starting here because this is where I'm going to go with my kind of prediction, but I'll work up to it. Last year, he was the 5th guy on the team in minutes played because he was one of few guys who was sort of in the rotation throughout the season, but he was 11th in minutes per game, meaning he was never a big minute guy, but he was always effing there. And that's interesting to me because I think there is space for him to play a bigger role this year. John Collins is gone. There are some other nuanced things. It looks like the Jazz are committed to playing him more at the 4 than at the 5. So we'll see what that looks like. For all those reasons, I don't think he's going to be a 21-minute-a-game player. I think we might start to see his minutes creep up. And actually, I guess I'll just go there, even though this is kind of out of order. I bet he finishes the year kind of firmly in the top 7 in the rotation. I think the top 7 in some order are going to be whichever guard, holds down the starting job. Right now it's Keyonte, Ace, Lowry, Taylor Hendricks, Walker Kessler. I think the 6th guy in minutes will be either Bryce Sensabaugh or it might be another guard, depending on, again, how the guard battle shakes out. And then I think Flip, after that, I think Flip has the most credible route to being like that 7th or 8th guy, which is a big deal because, again, not that the Jazz are going to be thinking about a playoff rotation this year, but most teams, most good teams, the way they kind of define themselves and their depth is those front 7 or 8 guys. If you think about the Jazz when they were good, it was the starters and Joe Ingles and Jordan Clarkson. And so, I do think that we're going to see a season of Flip where he's more important to the Jazz's rotation. And I think the best way that will play out for the Jazz is if he looks credible defensively as a 4, because I think that's looking more and more like his NBA future.
I don't think he's credible defensively at either spot right now. I see it impossible as a full-time 5. But the virtue of some of Kyle Filipowski's offense is that he can play with any of the front court guys you mentioned. He can play with Kessler, Markkanen, Hendricks, Bailey, Nurkic. You can play him with anything. And if we get a grumpy version of Jusuf Nurkic, or Nurkic is hurt, or Nurkic is traded, yeah, okay, we're playing him at backup 5, and we don't feel great about that at all. Then you start wondering if you tether him to Taylor Hendricks to get some credible rim protection there. The Jazz are bad. It's fine to have Filipowski playing out of position on this version of the Jazz. It's in certain situations, it's fine for him to play the 5. And just like Kelly Olynyk, I think the Kelly Olynyk comps will never go away for me. I'm sorry. It's just a player who can shoot and pass and is that big. And the NBA is trending big right now, that having someone who can score and rebound at that level, also just dribble the ball up and pass a little bit. Love everything that he can do from an offensive standpoint. Defensively, it's just going to learn how to be a bad MFer, right? It's just, I think that's he showed a little bit of that in Summer League, showed that a little bit last year, of course, a little bit in college, where he's not guarding the rim, but he's learning how to not get moved from his spot without fouling. And there are lots of guys in the NBA, including one ancient player who is a teammate of his in Kevin Love, where Kevin Love did survive as a center-ish type player on many lineups. He never started at center in his heyday, but he played a lot of 5 because he was just solid and stout, rebounded the hell out of the ball, and was very good at not fouling. That is his future if he's going to be that level of player. Did I say the player was Kevin Love? I don't know if I actually mentioned his name.
You did.
But that is a real future for him. And so defensively, I'm just looking out, or I'm not looking to see, okay, if he's playing the 4, is he getting torched on the perimeter? Yes, he's going to get torched on the perimeter. I'm looking to see if he can play big man style defense without fouling. And just a fabulous season for him would be, I think, 7th man, where he's just always playing 25 minutes a game on a variety of weird, funky lineups that cause major problems for the opponent defense. And I'm optimistic on his season. I think I'm so excited about so many of the Jazz young guys. For him in particular, I think playing on a team that gives a shit is really going to show a lot of the players like him, who are really competitive and always used to winning and bring a lot to the table offensively. They really thrive when the team is trying versus just kind of being out there doing whatever. So I think the more competitive version of the Jazz this year, which we've said over and over again, the Jazz are going to actually be trying. They're not good enough to win, but they're actually going to be trying. And I think that means a whole lot when it comes to guys like Filipowski playing meaningful minutes against a Houston type of team where, hey, they're trying to get to the playoffs, but can you match up with Şengün for a little bit? I love that story for him this year.
So the 25 guys who defended the most shots at the rim last season in the NBA, this is what Mark means. Well, I don't want to pretend that I know what Mark meant. Here's what Dan Clayton means when he says that Kyle at the 5 just might not ever work in the NBA. There were 25 guys who defended 330 or more field goals at the rim last year. The worst in defensive field goal percentage allowed at the rim number one, Josh Hart. He's not a big. He's a guard / wing. He's a big body guard. He's a tough guy, whatever. But he's not a big. Number 2, Gershon Yabusele, kind of a small ball 4, but really more of the body type of a big meaty 3. And then Kyle Filipowski. Kyle Filipowski allowed 70% at the rim. That is basically league average, which means guys were shooting at the rim the same percentage that they just would have shot if he didn't exist at all. And it was just, that's a problem. And that's why I say, when I say credible defensively as a 4, What I basically mean is, can he move his feet? Can he guard in space, and not necessarily stay in front of guys, but at least recover well, and or if you're going to get beat, can you at least funnel guys according to the scheme and the team's defensive plan for that player or that night? And
Well,
that's
players of
mostly
his
what I mean.
of his ilk, to that point about defense, the credible defensively here, and you're mentioning some of the things schematically that can work. You're talking about between the ears stuff, and
Right.
oftentimes you can see these players start to figure out predicting offense and taking risks and gambles and just getting to a spot before the opponent ball handler or mover or cutter or whatever, just because you know where they're going. And if you can get there before him just because you know what's coming, that's as good as just reacting quickly. Like you can still get there sooner than the other guy. Those are all ways that you can be better defensively without magically improving your athleticism.
Yeah. I also, just a couple of the random Kyle Filipowski thoughts. I've kind of already said my piece in a roundabout way. My position thing is I want to see him at the 4. My best outcome is that defensively he can operate as a 4. My worst case outcome for him is that he can't. And so we're sitting here a year from now still not really knowing how he projects positionally in the NBA. I think that'll be a problem and something he's going to have to solve to get minutes and to still be in the league in 7 years. I think he probably will. To me, he looks like an NBA player, but teams also have to be able to figure out how you make sense. But just a couple of other random little statistical observations. He took a ton of his shots as threes last year. 42% of his shots were threes. He's a 35% three-point shooter. I think that number will go up just naturally. He's more comfortable now. He understands the NBA game better. He knows where his shots are going to come. I think that number is going to go up, even though kind of his month-to-month splits sort of proved me wrong a little bit because he actually shot worse later in the year. But whatever, I don't care about that. I think year 2, his shooting stats will sort of harden up, and he's a pretty decent rim finisher. You'd like him to be a little better as a big guy, but he can finish well enough at the rim that I'm no longer concerned about what people were saying before last season, which is, could he kind of take the bangs and take the hits in the NBA paint? Doesn't appear to be a problem. I think Kyle Filipowski is an NBA player, and how much and how long depends on kind of whether or not he can answer this positional riddle.
39% from 3 in Summer League when he won MVP honors, which we will remember forever and ever and ever.
Hang a banner.
And with how much attention was focused on him, I think that's a notable number to say, like, okay, yeah, this is a real shooting number that is worth kind of putting a check mark next to and say, you can actually shoot in the NBA. I don't really have a problem with that. The bad season can also involve, as related to that Summer League MVP point, if he can't operate as the 5th best guy on the court kind of situation, where he is a guy who his offense is predicated on being not necessarily having the ball in his hands, but being the focal point of the offense. Like, can he shift along the perimeter? Can he set those off-ball screens? Can he do all like the little things that you need? I think he's a tough, smart guy who will do those things, but is he going to shoot well when he hasn't touched the ball in 7 minutes? Like, right. As opposed to kind of being like a warm-up, he constantly has the ball. So that could be something I'm looking out for him. I got to see him with 4 other guys who can shoot. Like, if Utah can credibly put out, if he's playing the 5, right, in some sort of offense-only type of situation, Utah's got so many 5-out lineups that can really cause problems for opposing defenses. And as much as 5-out lineups have been in vogue in the NBA for years and years and years now, everyone thinks like, oh, it's been forever that this has been a style in the NBA to do 5-out offenses. It is so hard to craft a roster that can actually do that credibly. Guys don't just magically learn how to shoot when they get in the NBA, and that's not a very easy skill. And the Jazz can credibly put out a lot of 5-out lineups because of guys like Kyle Filipowski and apparently now Jusuf Nurkic, which we're going to talk about. But it's that sort of thing can make the Jazz, when Filipowski's on the floor at center, if he's playing at center and they have a 5-out lineup, if those are like 18th, 19th, 20th in offense type of offensive ratings in those sorts of lineups, that's really cool for me. So that's the sort of lineups I want to see with him this year.
Nice. Co-sign. One more random note before we move on to Nurk. I think it's fitting that we talked about Taylor Hendricks and Kyle Filipowski together. I think people talk about Hendricks as someone who today can credibly guard 1 through 4. If Hendricks ever gets to the point where he can guard some 5s in the NBA, most 5s in the NBA, then that actually could help Filipowski be more relevant and be able to be deployed in more situations. Because then you could start to imagine lineups where Flip is the 5 on offense, but he and Hendricks are toggling a little bit on defense. I don't think that's a this year thing. I think that's something that Taylor Hendricks might be able to grow into. Jusuf Nurkic. I think both of us have come through this preseason and are a little bit pleasantly surprised about Jusuf Nurkic and just have a different idea about his potential impact on the 2025-2026 Jazz. Am I putting words in your mouth, or is that fair?
So I think Nurkic starts off on a negative foot for me for 2 main areas. One is we traded Colin Sexton for him, and we attached an asset to Colin Sexton. So we're still left from the offseason feeling like this isn't right. Like this does not compute as someone that matches what Colin Sexton we all thought he was worth. I mentioned this today to some other NBA friends who I'm in a fantasy league with, that one thing I'm glad about with our current management structure of the Jazz is that we don't have a Joe Dumars or a Nico Harrison where we are left wondering as Jazz fans, did they call everybody? Do they actually know what the market is? We know that Zanuck and the Ainges have canvassed the market for what Colin Sexton was worth. And there was probably a time in the past year or 2 years, whatever, where they could have gotten 2 second-round picks for him. And they said, we can do a little better than that. We're going to hold on to him. And the difference between what the best offer they've ever been able to get for Colin Sexton and Jusuf Nurkic actually just isn't that big. But yeah, they held on to Colin Sexton too long, and they ended up with Jusuf Nurkic, and we all just feel bad about that. So don't feel great about that. The second part of it is we've all seen Jusuf Nurkic, what he does when he's grumpy, and he is a desultory basketball player. When he is not happy, when he's not engaged, he did it in Phoenix. He was present in Charlotte and did what he needed to do, but Charlotte had no intention on keeping him, even though they had 0 centers on their roster, right? Like they have Moussa Diabate, who's kind of a very, very undersized version of a center. They drafted Kalkbrenner after the fact. But then we're thinking about Jusuf Nurkic as just a guy who just has never really been all that happy in the NBA. And when he's unhappy, he does not play very good basketball. And he can bring a Rudy Gay style of toxicity to his general demeanor. And on a team that's going to lose a lot of basketball games, you got to be really careful about bringing in personalities like that. Like, that is very, very scary. So, I am going to be watching very intently on how the Jazz manage him as a person. I don't know how much winning means to Jusuf Nurkic. I really don't. I don't know if he's like, I belong on a championship team. I'm a starting center in this league. I certainly know when he was younger, there was a whole... He did not feel great about being supplanted by Nikola Jokic, right? There was that sort of rivalry situation. He's always kind of had a chip on his shoulder that he belongs as a starter. But yeah, it's been many years, my buddy. I don't know of his attitude on this team, so that I am still concerned about his attitude. However, good Jusuf Nurkic is a really good basketball player for this team in particular, because on a team that is so bereft of natural passing instincts and ideas, having that at the center position is going to be so beneficial for the Ace Baileys and the Lowry Markkanens of the world. And everything that I was hoping for out of Drew Eubanks last year of like, big guy who can set some mean screens. I've never seen a softer center in my life than Drew Eubanks setting screens last year. It drove me nuts how soft Drew Eubanks' screens were last year. Jusuf Nurkic knows how to set screens, not just, big, tough, and mean. He's skilled with it. He's very ballistic with a lot of how he can move with a point guard. One of his closest friends in the league is Damian Lillard. He played a lot of minutes and possessions with Damian Lillard, and I think he learned a lot playing with a off the bounce kind of point guard like that. So I think he's going to bring some real professional basketball to this team. And best case scenario is he's just happy because the vibes are good and we give him minutes and we say, hey, yeah, we're not winning games, man, but you're playing 20 minutes a night. We're playing Walker Kessler 28 and you're playing 20. And when you're out there, we need you. We don't care if you shoot a shitload of threes, which apparently he shoots a lot of threes now. Giving him license to be himself keeps him happy. And he's just passing the hell out of the basketball, and he enjoys playing with the rest of the team. And finally, he puts on some dispels via osmosis or teaching or whatever to Walker Kessler on, hey, this is what has worked for me in the NBA. Maybe you can pick up a skill or two. We saw Walker Kessler have 8 damn assists in a preseason game the other day. You can't tell me that isn't a little bit Jusuf Nurkic coded. So it's all attitude for him. If the attitude's good, he's really going to help the young guys get better at basketball. That's why you have veterans on the team. That's what he can provide if he's happy.
So I'll respond quickly to a couple of non-Nurkic points you made. Number one, for whatever it's worth, and Rudy Gay was a disaster, unfortunately, for the Jazz on the court. For whatever it's worth, I have heard that he was kind of a consummate professional in the locker room, and that he was not poisonous in that strict setting, including when he was briefly around as part of the rebuild. He was still on the roster for year one of the rebuild, and I have been told by Jazz people that he was a delight around the young guys. Doesn't really change my opinion about the way the basketball part of his Utah Jazz era went down. The other thing I'll say, I'm still both underwhelmed by the Colin Sexton return in a vacuum, and also not that worried about they held on to him too long. The other thing they got by holding on to Colin Sexton was 3 years of Colin Sexton. And sometimes I think it's okay. If the return for a guy 2 summers ago was going to be 2 seconds, sometimes I think it's okay to be like, look, there are other ways to manufacture seconds. We got Colin Sexton running some pick and rolls. We got Colin Sexton exciting our fans. We got Colin Sexton showing the young guys how to approach a game of basketball. I don't personally go to bed at night and stare at the ceiling and go, oh man, there was a point in time when they could have gotten 2 seconds for Colin Sexton.
Well, that is actually my point, is that I don't think that the Jazz waited too long. Well, the difference between getting Jusuf Nurkic and the 2 second-round picks or whatever is small. There's no, I don't care about that difference. Because I'm pretty certain that there was no big offer ever on the table for Colin Sexton. So why do we care about that? Yeah, we got a bad return, and perhaps they could have done better. But doing better also means maybe bringing Colin Sexton into training camp. That's something that they wanted to avoid, clearly.
Yeah. That's I guess. So it sounds like we agree more than I thought based on your initial framing. I think that 2 years ago and 1 year ago and whatever else in between, the decision-making tree was, yes, we can get X for Colin Sexton, but we still have a use for Colin Sexton. And the decision-making this summer was, no, we can't get a lot for Colin Sexton, but we need to create minutes for Ace Bailey right now. And we're not going to have Ace Bailey stand around and watch Colin Sexton dribble the letters off of basketball. So anyway, I'm not upset about that. Let's get back to talking about Jusuf Nurkic, because that's what we're actually here to do, and not relitigate trades and years of non-trades and whatever. Yeah, when I say I'm not optimistic, when I say that my eyes have been opened a little bit to what Nurkic could provide if he is, plugged in and on the same page, mostly what I'm talking about is what you said. Just he's someone who appears to be a willing ball mover, an instinctual ball mover, someone who doesn't have to, sit on the ball for 12 seconds to know where it should go next. How many, Am I exaggerating, or did we see like 5, 6, 7 touch passes from Nurk in 4 preseason games? Like that was a nightly thing in the preseason. Just watching him like get the ball in the mid post and in one swift motion, just like deflecting it to the guy in the corner or deflecting it to a cutter. And it didn't always even lead to something, but it's just that's the kind of thing that just makes you go, he's just like the prototypical Euro big who's like who like just sees the game really well. And I think to your point, that could help this particular version of the Jazz because this particular version of the Jazz doesn't have a ton of just ace passers. So for me, the best outcome for him this season is basically the version of him we saw in the preseason. And yeah, you're right. That is dependent on him, like not hating Will Hardy by game 43 or whatever. But I'm actually kind of encouraged by the way he talked before the season and by what we've seen in 4 preseason games.
Legitimately 300 pounds, legitimately 7 feet tall. He is not going to play very positive defense, and that's okay. I'm not looking for that.
Right.
I'm looking for him to boost the offense of every other young player that needs to learn NBA basketball and getting a little bit more clearance on screens. Just having a guy who's willing to move the ball makes everyone just excited to play basketball, right? Like those sorts of like, oh yeah, I get to play some minutes with Nurk. This is going to be great, right? And just kind of gets everyone to have a little pep in their step. Even though his performance on the court, just like Rudy Gay, even if his performance on the court has clearly gone up and down based on how happy he is in a certain situation, he's had very positive teammate interactions over the years. Everyone really likes him as a person and everything. And he had a pretty good Eurobasket run for Bosnia and Herzegovina, by the way. So just a guy that I am surprised how happy I am that he's here. Let's keep an eye on.
Here's my allegory. I'm going to tell a story that doesn't sound like it's about Nurk, but I'll make it about Nurk. A few days before the Jazz made the Bogey Olynyk trade, I was talking to someone with the Jazz who said, "Yeah, I think we might have a Bogey trade lined up, and it's probably not what the fans think we're going to get for Bogey. Like there's just not unencumbered firsts out there. We can't get a first for Bogey without taking back bad salary or a player we don't want or whatever." But if you notice, Dan, we don't really have on this roster. This is before anyone knew if Walker Kessler was going to be good or not. Walker Kessler hadn't played a pro game yet. We don't really know if we have anyone on our team who can just kind of like set screens, a big man who can kind of help our offense make sense, that sort of thing. This person gave me a few too many clues because I got off the phone and almost immediately figured out that he was talking about Kelly Olynyk. And so I kind of knew that a Bogey for Olynyk swap was probably in the cards. But the way they talked about Olynyk reminds me a lot of the way I'm thinking right now about Nurk. He's just someone who will make the Jazz roster and offense make sense more often than he doesn't. Having said that, I don't want them to need him too much. I think the worst case scenario is that, he's playing 23 minutes a game instead of 18 minutes a game. Just because I want to see things from Walker Kessler and I want to see, Kyle Filipowski, and I want to see some of these other alternative lineups. But I think to the degree that he can be what he was in the preseason, which means just like a legit second unit center who makes the offense make sense and a sometimes starter because Walker Kessler probably won't play 82 because in this day and age, nobody plays 82 anymore. That's fine. That's fine. And also he's someone who we should just watch contractually because at $19.4 million expiring, he's also the most likely guy to get included if the Jazz actually have an opportunity to get involved in like a semi-significant trade. Meaning if something comes up where they get to actually be a buyer because someone who wasn't supposed to be available is suddenly available and you need to ladder up to that salary in addition to sending 3, 4, 5 picks, Nurk is going to be the first salary that gets thrown into every fake trade, every fake buyer trade that we construct for the Jazz between now and February. So, but anyway, I just, all the same things that person said to me 3 years ago now about Olynyk, I think Nurk could have a positive impact on just this feeling like a professional basketball operation.
I have nothing further to add. We'll see how happy he remains.
So our last guy is Svi Mykhailiuk, a guy who Mark is begging me to not make him talk about him for too long. Svi's semi-interesting to me just because he does run kind of a de facto point guard role when he is on the floor. So I do think we'll see him here and there. I think he's someone who will run some pick and roll when the Jazz are down a point guard, or when a point guard isn't playing well, or when someone's in foul trouble, or when Will Hardy is sending a message or whatever. The thing, I'll keep it short on Svi, Mark. For me, he's a guy who the idea of him works best when he's actually shooting well. He had a 2-season peak. It was 3 teams he was with over a 2-season span where he shot 50% from 3. I don't expect any guy to shoot 50% from 3, but with the Jazz right now, he's shooting 34% from 3. And I just don't think there's enough there in that archetype unless he's also hitting some shots.
So I completely agree, and the more you watch him and you see how they deployed him last year and how they plan to deploy him this year, he is the perfect archetype of, we need some sort of ball handler that can do something with the ball in his hands and have shooting capability, but is okay with never playing for 4 months if it never comes to that. Or playing and getting a paycheck, and we'll see what happens from there. A lot of these veteran point guard on the edges, fringes of the NBA, they lack some key NBA skills. One of them namely being shooting, or they're point guards in title but really can't pass the ball at all. And there's a reason he's on the fringes of the rotation of a bad team, because he's a bad player. And I don't need to juice him up or anything like that. But he does some competent NBA things for when he does need to play. He can fit in with any other 4 players on the team, and you just don't hate how the rest of the lineup can work because he's out there. In other words, for a player of his type, if he's out there, a lot of times these types of fringes of the NBA veterans, they present a problem that the rest of the lineup kind of has to tweak itself to. And I don't think that's the case with him. He does enough offensively and fits in some various places defensively where you don't need to worry about what the other 4 guys are because he's out there, because he just kind of fits in wherever. So that malleability and willingness to not play is very helpful for the Jazz. I love the idea of, when you're a bad team, just taking shots at prospects, ideas, evolving things. The choice was clearly between Svi or Johnny Juzang this summer. I think Juzang showed enough to at least, he latched on to Minnesota as a 2-way player. Maybe Juzang does not have a super NBA future, but I think if you're looking at it, Juzang has more, I don't know what he is, potential than Svi. So a lot of us Jazz fans are thinking, I just would have rather picked the guy with random prospect ideas, or a guy I'd never heard of, right? I've never heard of that player. I'm willing to try anything once, and we'll see how the Jazz use their 2-way situations, like how much Elijah Harkless will play and that sort of thing. So the idea of Svi as part of the future is obviously not a thing, and it makes you just kind of feeling kind of sad. And he's not good enough to block minutes for Walt Clayton or Isaiah Collier, and certainly not Keyonte George. And I don't think, if Jazz fans see him playing 20 minutes on a certain game and Walt Clayton played 24 minutes, that's not a reason for alarm, everybody. We need to, and when that happens, it's fine. You can't just, because the minutes are available, just give Walt Clayton 38 minutes. It's going to wear him down. He's not going to play well. You have to teach rookies and young players how to play point guard, especially. So Svi is just kind of a guy to help move the train along, and that's fine. Good season for him is just shoot well and don't complain when you don't play.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the value proposition there. Won't care if he doesn't play. When he does need to play, you can use him a couple different ways. He's a 40%. Last year, he was a 40% catch and shoot shooter from three. He was a 29% off the bounce shooter. That's pretty bad, especially for a guy who handles the ball a lot when he's in the game. Kind of doesn't matter. You're right. If the Jazz are giving him significant run, it's because someone else whose future they're a lot more invested in is hurt, struggling, in foul trouble, whatever. I don't mind Svi as much as I think you do. And when he plays, I'm like, okay, whatever. He'll shoot 30-something% from three, and he'll run some pick and rolls, and like it'll be fine.
What's funny is I like him as a player. I actually think he's intriguing. He does some interesting things. I think when you're just in this position as a bad team, I'm way more on the super dumb fan side of things sometimes, where I'm just like, give me something I don't know than the thing I do know.
Take a shot on.
Yes, and
take a shot on some kid who.
I had never heard of Simone Fontecchio before we signed him, so I'm like, okay, let's try something like that. But because the Jazz have so few competent ball handlers, you could get into a situation real fast where, even just based on regular nicks and cuts injuries, Collier and Keyonte are out. Man, you actually really do need competency out of Mykhailiuk instead of just, the guy that Mark has never heard of, who could he be? Like, no, you actually could use a fourth guard there, especially because the two-way slots are occupied by not that, right? Like, Elijah Harkless is ostensibly a point guard, but that he's not a pass-first point guard. John Tomjay had the ball in his hands a lot in Wisconsin, but he's a score-first guy who has no idea what he's doing yet. So it makes sense for the development of the guys we care about to make sure that you have competency up and down the roster in key spots. And it's actually, I think Svi Mykhailiuk absolutely fits that bill way more than Johnny Juzang. So I totally understand why they made that decision. It's just so boring.
8 teams in 7 years for Svi Mykhailiuk. We'll see how long his Jazz future lasts. He's guaranteed now for $3 million for this year. But I do think that if at some point the Jazz see a shiny object somewhere else on the waiver wire, or a young guy they want to sign, of all the expiring veterans, Svi has the smallest salary. So, I mean, let's all remember they waived guaranteed salary the year they wanted to make a waiver claim on a guy named Joseph Howard Ingles. So, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibilities that they do that. But for now, Svi Mykhailiuk is here and will be that sort of 4th or 5th ball handler. Well, that's it. We've done the roster, Mark. I know you've got a 6-year-old stirring over there, plus you've got a sore throat. It's late. We've watched BYU beat Utah. Sad face for Dan. Only a semi-sad face. I'm not a big college football fan, but I did go to the U. Any other final thoughts before we put this 3-part series to bed?
After talking through all of these players, I'm so much more optimistic about the trajectory for almost all of them. I really do think we're going to see some positive growth this year. For one, caring and trying is going to help a lot. And I think we're going to see some magic out of... You can't have this many young players and not be... We're going to be surprised by somebody by the end of the year, way more optimistically than we did at the start of the year. Hopefully that's not balanced out by surprising pessimism on what we thought about a player going into it. But my thoughts on Ace Bailey and Taylor Hendricks in particular are just, I couldn't be higher. And I don't know if I was effusive as I wanted to be about Taylor Hendricks as we were recording this. I'm just concerned about like kind of his preseason. Like, he looks good in certain areas, not others, but like I'm wildly optimistic about what a Bailey, Hendricks, Markin, and Kessler, like that foursome is... that has the outlines of a playoff team in a couple years or even next year, and because of what they've shown us in preseason and what I'm looking forward to. So just need a lot of the other things to kind of work out in the Jazz favor, and I couldn't be more excited for just a home opener against a tough team. And my broader thoughts are just, this is a team worth paying attention to this year. As we've talked through all these 15 players, you're going to want to watch this team. Like, the young players are not just going to play empty minutes, empty calories basketball. This is going to be competent basketball where you're going to walk away from each game thinking, making honest assessments of these players, which is worth paying attention to as a Jazz fan.
Couldn't agree more. I'm excited. I think there will be a lot of data points in this season, good, bad, indifferent, ugly, otherwise. So it'll be fun. Mark, thanks for coming up with this device, this idea for a second straight year and keeping us on task so we could get through 15 guys on the regular roster. We will probably come at you all with one more pre-regular season podcast. Depending on how things shake out schedule-wise, that might be Mark and me again. It might just be Mark, might be Mark and Ken, might be all three of us. We're going to try to come at you with just kind of some broad thoughts about where things are at. I have something I've been working on for way too long about just kind of state of the rebuild. That'll probably be a written thing. But yeah, I agree. There's so many inflection points now individually, and then as they fit into the panorama for the Jazz, that this should be a really fun season. I'm Dan Clayton. That's Mark Pereira. Mark, hope you get feeling better. Hope you get those kids all lassoed into the proper beds and
I might have to literally
to
use a lasso tonight, but we'll figure it out.
Okay. All right. Well, take it easy. And this has been a Salt City Hoops podcast.